You don't fail until you stop trying, right? Even if you set back, right? You set back and you haven't achieved something, you keep trying. You haven't failed yet.
I lost over $324,000 trying to make an Amazon business work. I nearly lost everything, my marriage, my house, everything. But I was able to come back. And people ask, how do you able to do that? And I wondered about that. How was I able to do that? And the word resiliency came up, but what does that mean? And is resiliency a trait or is it a skill that can be taught? And that's where the Resiliency Project podcast was born. Today, we're going to talk to our guest about his failures and comebacks so that maybe we can learn and maybe teach others how to be more resilient and come back from failures. And my guest today, it's honestly, as a lifelong Giants fan, this is a bucket list moment. I cannot believe this is happening. We have with us here today, Tiki Barber. Tiki, thank you so much for joining us. Hi, welcome to the program.
Pleasure. My pleasure, Nick. I'm looking forward to this. It'll be fun.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We met randomly at a dinner about a year ago, and it's so great to reconnect with you. Listen, we jump right in here. So tell me, Tiki, what was your biggest failure?
I think personally, I've had a couple. One personally was a marriage failure, which happens to, unfortunately, a lot of people in this country. Professionally, it was likely, early in my Giants career, I was basically getting pushed out because I just wasn't good enough. I mean, I was an okay NFL player, but the Giants, Ernie Accorsi and the general managers were trying to replace me. And whether that was Joe Montgomery, who we drafted from Ohio State, or Sean Bennett, who we brought in as a free agent, Gary Brown, who was also a free agent. And then obviously in 2000, they drafted the Heisman Trophy winner in the first round in Ron Dane. And as a running back on that team, it's how can you not see the writing on the wall and potentially think that your career, or at least my career, was over? But to be honest, it motivated me and it made me work harder. And to me, coming back from that, it really helped define all the other failures that would come forward in my life, that you can always find a way back. You just have to keep your mind right. And it's interesting you talk about meeting you a year ago. I think one of the keys to resiliency, for me at least, has been the people that I've met. It's the relationships that you have. And going back to the Giants example, I had a great relationship with my then head coach, Jim Fossil. May he rest in peace. He passed away just after COVID. He kept supporting me and kept giving me the little things to work on, to get better at, that ultimately allowed me to find my stride. I mean, literally and figuratively. And ultimately, I turned into the player that I ultimately became for the Giants.
Well, so take me back to those moments, right, where it's pretty obvious that the organization that you're working for hard every day is basically telling you you're no good. You know, what are you doing? Right. How do you turn that into motivation? How do you not let that just sort of crush you?
It's funny because they're telling you without telling you. In sports, they're not coming up to you and saying, you know what, we don't want you anymore. See you later. It's kind of like, we're just going to do this. Right. No, they're doing these subtle things like drafting someone else or not playing you as much. They kind of say, maybe I stink. Maybe this isn't the right profession for me. I think what helped me get through it was, let me start back at the beginning. I am blessed because I have an identical twin brother, and we're the same person essentially genetically. And he was always my support system. He was always the person who I could come to and talk to, and he would tell me how it is, not what you wanted to hear. I think sometimes when things are going down, people will tell you what you want to hear, because it makes you feel better, right? You need to boost your self-esteem a little bit and stop feeling sorry for yourself. But I think the biggest thing he did for me was just tell me, this is what you suck at, right? And I know he's not trolling me. I know he's not trying to be like jokingly facetious. He's just being real. And I think that ultimately it's what helped me refocus myself. And that in combination with Jim Fossil really starting to dial in, saying, Tiki, I know you want to be the starting running back for this team, this great organization, the New York Giants, but I want you to do this one little hurdle to jump over. Be the best third down back in the league. Be the best punt returner in the league. And once you do those things great, then we'll talk. We'll figure it out. And luckily I hung on long enough and did those little things really well. People who had PPR leagues back in the late 90s and early 2000s, they know what I'm talking about, because I'd have 70 receptions or 80 receptions a season, and it was like, man, Tiki's not the starter. Man, he's pretty good for my team. This is the fantasy team, right? But obviously, I was also good for the Giants, and I think it allowed me to find my footing again. And then I won't call it luck, because I think it was just the right intersection of being prepared, being ready, and the opportunity presented itself when Sean Payton, who has been a great head coach in the NFL, obviously, decided to reimagine our offense. And it fit the skill set that I had started to develop. And ultimately, we went to the Super Bowl that season in 2000. And my career just that was the year they drafted Rondane. My career just kind of took off. So it's not quite faking it till you make it, but it is doing enough to make yourself valuable enough till you can figure it out. We're all young in our professions at one point. We think we know what's going on, but we don't really know what's going on. And once you start to grasp not just your myopic little picture, but the entire picture, it makes it easier to see where you fit in.
Yeah. Someone at the beginning of my career sat me down and they drew a little graph, right? And they said, look, kid, you're at the beginning of your career. You're right down here, right? So you're going to spend a lot of time learning, and you're going to get to the top of this curve, right? He's drawing a line, and he's saying, now you're right here, you're at the top of Mount Stupid, because you think you know all kinds of stuff, right? But here's the fall, right? In these following years, you're not going to know anything, right? Tell me about, and I want to double click into something that you just said, right? Where do you come up with the patience to go through that, right? And to say, you know what, though, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to take these little wins. Where does that come from? Was that built? You did learn it over time?
I think it's innate. I think so this is a tangential story. So because I'm an identical twin, we always had this debate with so many people in my life, career, professionally, as a broadcaster now, the difference between nature and nurture. Like what is born into you or God given to you, and what do you learn along the way? And I would always say it's nurture. It's what you learn. Yes, there are some innate skills and characteristics, physically, emotionally, mentally, they just happen. Like kids that are 5 years old or 3 years old, and they're just smart as whips, right? And it's like they haven't been taught that yet. They just kind of get that. But for me, it's always been nurture. It's always been the influences around you that give you resiliency. And for me, it was my mom. And I think as I got older, when I was young, as I got older, started to get, my teenage years and close to college, I started to understand the grind that she was going through as a single mom and the challenges that she faced. And I started to appreciate the things that she was always telling me. And one of the things that she would always tell us was, you don't fail until you stop trying, right? Even if you set back, right? You've set back and you haven't achieved something, you keep trying. You haven't failed yet. And so for me, that has persisted my whole life. You just keep trying again, right? In the NFL and with the Giants, it was, I'm going to keep trying again. I haven't failed yet because they haven't told me I'm done, and I haven't quit. So I haven't failed yet. And the same thing happened in my broadcasting career with NBC. I was working for the Today Show, and after 3 years, it was like, this isn't quite right. And I was kind of sitting on the street, went through a divorce. It was hard, but I knew that I still wanted to do it. So I just kept trying. And so I think it was ingrained in me and from my mom, that failure is only something that sits on your resume when you settle for it. Right. And people from the outside might not see it. They might say, oh, yeah, he failed at that. He failed at this. But ultimately, I knew I was going to keep grinding and trying, because it's what my mom always forced us to do by continually reminding us to do it.
So let me talk to you about the resiliency needed coming up on the end of your professional football life, because you're still a young man, right? And, I would assume that pretty much throughout your life, right, it's lots of superlatives, one of the most, sought after running backs, right? And then we get to the Giants. That's a hard fought, to get to a place where now you're the number 1A guy, right? And then age catches up to you, right? We got Saquon in the wings. What was that like, right? As we're transitioning from, professional career to, well, now I got to get up for something else. What was next? And how did you come up with the ability to do that?
It's interesting. I think I took the failures early in my career and turned them into a new opportunity. So when I was second or third year, I'll never forget this moment. My manager, his name is Mark Lepselter. He's still my manager to this day and a great friend. He's like he's like family to me. He came to me and said, one off season, I want to divorce you from the game of football. Not that you're going to quit, not you're going to stop, but I just want to divorce what your professional life is from football for an off season. And we're going to do other things. And so I started working at WFAN, interestingly, where I've been for the last 4 years on WFAN, but 14 years really, because of the national network that Odyssey is now a part of. We had a national show. And so I remember him saying that, and I was like, well, okay, what can I do? I'm educationally built to be a software engineer, right? I'd studied management information systems, database design, programming. And I remember it was at that critical moment in the world, right? Y2K was coming around. I graduated in 97. So Y2K was the big thing. And software engineers and data and programmers it was a big job. And I was like, I could do this. This would be great. But after being in the league for 4 years, my knowledge is obsolete, right? I'm learning to program in like these basic languages, COBOL.
That didn't even exist anymore. Yeah,
we learned that, like all these things. They were so far past that by the time I had quote unquote failed in the NFL that it wasn't really an option. I mean, I could have went back to school and got my master's degrees, but I didn't want to do that. And so I realized being in New York, I kind of liked people, right? I liked communicating with people. And so when he suggested that I go try do something on WFAN, I had no idea what it would be like. I was working overnight. I was doing I was getting to the studio at 10:30 at night. I was on the air from 11 to like 2 a.m. with Joe Beningo in this crappy little studio over in Astoria, Queens. I was scared as hell going across the bridge in the middle of the night. It was a different New York back then. Yeah. But I learned to enjoy it. And I love the interaction with the fans, particularly in New York. If I was doing this in I don't know, wherever, Kansas City, I probably wouldn't have loved it as much. But because it was New York and the engagement became so impalpable to me, I realized that I can do this. And so I did it for an off season, which led to the next thing, which was WCBS, the local Channel 2, asking me to do morning sports, which then led to the Yes Network when they first launched, doing a football show. It was the only football show that they had, which then led to me being on Fox and Friends on Fox News. And then ultimately, when I decided to retire, the Today Show. And so I had started to build this secondary track that I could parallel walk on with my NFL career. And it allowed the failures to not feel so bad because I knew that I had another train to jump off onto. And at the end of my career, come 2006, I'm getting older, not old by any stretch. I was 30 years old, but I felt like my body was starting to wear down. I'm not a big player. I'm 5'10", 205 pounds. And I was ready to do something else. And so when my football career ended, I already had another career to step right into. I didn't get lost like a lot of former players who don't have an idea of what they want to do. That dynamic has completely changed in 2026, 20 something years later, because guys are doing social media and media in real time while they're playing. And so they're programs now. The NFL has a program that, trains broadcasters from NFL players. And so it was something that accidentally became, not a crutch, but like a lifeline for me. So even though I stepped out of the NFL and the timing sucked because the Giants won a Super Bowl, I felt like I was already on another path that didn't make me feel like I had not achieved. You know what I mean? And I had a great career with the New York Giants, but I've been doing this twice as long now. Right. I've been a broadcaster for almost 20 years now, and I played for a decade. And so I think one of the keys is that when things start to feel like it's coming to an end, you can't be afraid to try something else. And I think a lot of people get stuck and they get in these ruts and they get lost in their professional life because they haven't even thought about what potentially could be next.
Yeah, I as an aside, I was 25 when you retired, and the media was all like, "Oh, he's an old man. He's 30 years old." Right. I was like, "Oh no, what does that mean for me?" So,
right. Really but now look how much it's changed, Nick. Look at these guys play till they're like 40 now. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I want to really get into something that probably our listeners struggle with when kind of starting over, right? So take me through the 10:30 at night, right? You're in a shitty little studio. You're an NFL player, right? You're a running back for the New York Giants. Here's what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
How do you get over sort of the ego to say, but I got to put in the reps, right? Because I got to restart as like a rookie. How do you put your ego aside to be able to do that? Dude,
you have no idea. The first time I did radio's different because you're just talking. You're having a conversation. Right. Nobody can see you. You're just a voice. When first time I did TV, and even though it's just, I don't know, 5 people, 8 people in a studio, you feel the eye, like you feel the hundreds of thousands of people looking at you, even though they're not actually there. And I was scared as hell. I mean, I was holding the platform, I was like almost shaking, trying to read the news. And it was about the reps. It was just getting more comfortable with being yourself. And I'll never forget the moment. And it was probably 2002. So I was still playing, but I was also doing media at the time. I'll never forget the moment when I had this realization that people want to interact with you. Like they want to have conversations with you when you're a known person. And this is me on an NFL, sports landscape. But I think the same applies if you are working for a large company or you're even a small company. Like people want that relationship. They want to be able to interact with you. And if you approach it with humility and not, I know everything, but teach me, I think it helps you become more ingratiated into those worlds. And then people want to help you, right? Then they want to help you get better at your job and thrive and excel. Because as much as we think about the individual nature of life, everything is a team. Like literally everything, whether it's your job, whether it's your relationships, obviously with sports, it's that way. It's always a team and no one does it individually. We talk about these guys who are self-made in their minds, self-made billionaires or millionaires or successful people. They all had someone whose shoulder they're standing on. And I think part of that realization when it happened to me in 2002, it gave me hope and faith that no matter what I did, someone's going to help me along the way. And I think that's been the key. It's always feeling a part of a team and realizing that nobody is self-made. Everybody has someone who's pushing them along.
TK, I love that. Building a community to gain resilience. Usually we get into our clients, kind of what they're doing, who they are. I think we all know who you are and what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days outside of broadcasting. What's going on in your life? What projects are you working on?
Yeah, no, there's a ton going on right now in my life. And because I've been on WFAN now in the afternoon drive, or previously in the afternoon drive with Evan Roberts. Now I'm on the midday show with Evan Roberts and Sean Morash. And it's about connecting with the fan in New York about all of the things that they're passionate about. Right now, obviously, it's the New York Knicks with a parade coming and this 53-year drought and the evolution of that team and the growth of that team and how like real it feels for these people who doubted forever. And so helping them express and talk about that emotion is one thing. And I have 6 kids. 2 of them are graduated from college already, both working in investment banking in the city. Of twins that are running track up in Greenwich. And then my youngest 2, who are 12 and 9, are in competitive cheer. So most of my life is running around and watching kids play sport.
Well. Yeah.
but it's also living this this life with the sport fan in New York, someone who probably cheered and cussed at me when I was playing. Now I'm like I'm their voice in the masses in New York City, and it's a great existence. It's a great way to make a living, and it's a great way to extend what was a pretty good career for me with the New York Giants.
I love that. Tiki, we ask everyone this final question. What does the word resiliency mean to you?
Resiliency to me is the ability to understand your faults, to accept the things that haven't gone right and still drive forward anyways. And to me, I use sports as a metaphor often because sports are immediate. You know what I mean? You know immediately whether you did your job or not. Other professions, it's harder. A marriage, it's harder because it's a month, it's a year, it's 6 years, it's 10 years. But in sports, the metaphor is right now. You know what you did right, you know what you did wrong. And when you fail, you get an immediate chance to correct it. And when I look at a team, just to bring back it to the Knicks, that's who they are. Resilient. If you need an immediate, right in your face example of what resiliency is, just look at the Knicks and this run that they went on, where they were exceptional, yet doubted for a lot of this postseason. Yet they found ways, whether they were down 22 in Cleveland with 7 minutes to go, or whether they're down 29 at half against the San Antonio Spurs in Game 4. They found a way to, again, stick together as a community, as a team, and push their way through it and ultimately come out successful. So to me, it's understanding it. It's recognizing it. It's not having doubt and saying, yeah, that's not really an issue. You recognize what the issue is, and then you push forward anyways. That's resiliency.
Amazing. Tiki, I think we learned so much today about mindset, about being patient, putting in those reps, and most importantly, building a community to build out that resiliency. Tiki Barber, thank you so much for joining us today on the Resiliency Project podcast. And guys, I think what we really learned here today is time is undefeated. Keep persisting, keep going, and it will work out. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Tiki. Until next time.